Good day, everyone. We are going to discuss the chapter 4. It's all about defining project. The outline will be 4.1 Step 1 defining the project scope, 4.2 Step 2 establishing the project priorities to be discussed by Ms. De La Cruz, 4.3 Step 3 creating the work breakdown structure, 4.4 Step 4 integrating the WBS with the organization, 4.5 Step 5 coding the WBS for the information system. These 5 generic that provides a structured approach for collecting the project information necessary for developing work breakdown structure is to be discussed by Ms. Abril. 4.6 project process breakdown structure, 0.47 responsibility matrix, 4.8 project communication plan to be discussed by Ms. Obiel. So this chapter describes a discipline, structure method for selectively collecting information used through all phase of project life cycle to meet the needs of all stakeholders and other customer, project manager, and to measure performance against the strategic plan for the organization. So the first step in generic is define the project scope. So what is project scope? Project scope is a definition of the end result of mission of your project or a product or service for your client or customer. Project scope is a part of project planning that involves determining and documenting a list of specific project goals, their deliverables, tasks, costs, and deadlines. The scope should be developed under the direction of project manager, customer, and other significant stakeholders. And also, the project manager is responsible for seeing that there is an agreement between the owner on the project objectives, deliverables, and each stage of the project, technical requirements, and so forth. For example, a project scope is deliverables in the early stage might be specification. For the second stage is 3 prototype for production. For the third is sufficient quality to introduce to market. And finally, the market production and training. And also, project scope is a document that will be published and used by the project owner and project participant for planning and measuring project success. So let's proceed to employing a project scope checklist clearly that the project scope is a skeleton interlocking all the elements of project plan to ensure that scope definition is complete. You may wish to use the following checklist. So what are the following checklists? First is project objectives, deliverables, milestone, technical requirements, limits, and inclusion. And last is review with customer. So the first checklist is project objectives, is to define the overall objectives to meet your customer's needs. So it means what you planned to achieve by the end of your project. For example of this is a result of intensive market research. A customer software company decide to develop a program that automatically translates the verbal sentence to English to Russian. The project should be completed within 3 years of the cost not exceeding 1.5 million. So it means the project objectives is answer the question of what, when, how much, and at times and where. So let's proceed to the second checklist is deliverables. Deliverables, the expected measurable output over the life of the project. So it refers to all the outputs, either tangible or intangible, that are submitted within the scope of the project. For example of this is deliverables in the early design phase of the project might be listed specification. In the second phase is deliverables that could be software coding and technical manual. The next phase could be the prototype, and the last could be the final test and approved software. But remember, deliverables and requirements are often used interchangeably. The next checklist will be the milestone. So what is milestone? A milestone is a significant event in a project that occurs at a point in time. The milestone schedule shows only major significance of work. It represents first route cut, estimate of time, cost, and resource of the project. It built using the deliverables as a platform to identify major significant work at the end of date. For example of milestone is testing complete and finished by July 1 for the same year. So it means milestone should be natural, important control point of the project. Milestone should be easy for all the project participants to recognize. So the next checklist is technical requirements. Technical requirements is a product or service will have technical requirements to ensure proper performance. Technical requirements typically clarify either the deliverables or define the performance specification. So, a factor that requires to deliver a design function or behavior from a system to satisfy a user's standards and needs. For example, this is the ability of 911 emergency, that is the emergency system to identify the caller phone number and where is the location of that phone. So that is technical requirements. Next is the limits and exclusion. The limits and exclusion is the limit of scope should be defined. Failure to do so can lead to false expectation and expending the resources and time on the wrong problem. For example of limits is work on site is allowed only between the hour of usually 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The maintenance and repair will be done only up to 1 month after the final inspection. Client will be billed and for additional training. Mabuild sila in additional training beyond that prescribed in the contract. So that is limits. And what is exclusion? Exclusion is further defined the boundary of the projects by stating which is not included. For example of the exclusion is data will be collected by the client, not the contractor. Another is the house will be built but no landscaping or security devices added. Another example is software will be installed but no training given. So that is the exclusion. So let's proceed to the last checklist is the review with customer. Completion of the scope checklist and end with the viewers view with your customer, internal or external. The main concern here is the understanding of the agreement to expectation. Is the customer getting what he or she desires in deliverables? Does the project definition identify key accomplishment, budgets, timing, and performance requirements? So the project scope checklist in step 1 is generic, defines the industry and companies will develop unique checklists and the templates to fit their needs and specific kind of the project. So a few companies engage in contract work refers to scope statement as scope statement of work or SOW. Other organizations use the term project charter. However, the term project charter is referred to a document that can authorize the project manager to initiate and lead the project. This document is issued by upper manager and provides the project manager with the written authorities to use the organizational resources for the project activities. Often the charter will be include a brief scope definition as a item as risk limit, business case, or spending limits, and even the team composition. Many of the projects suffer in scope creep, which is tendency for the project scope to expand over time. Dili man jud mawad-an og over time. So usually by changing requirements or specification and priorities. Scope creep can be reduced by carefully writing your scope statement. So scope creep are adding additional feature or function of new product, requirements, or work that is not authorized. Scope creep can have positive or negative effects on the project, but most cases are in scope creeps means adding cost and possible project delays, changing in sila mo change if there is a changes in requirements, specification, and priorities frequently result in cost overruns and delay. For example, if this is the when requested deliverables become mini deliverables, and other example is the customers need to change or the need to change the requirements or something that like that. Another example is the end goal for the project is changed by the stakeholder. So that is a scope creep example. So let's proceed to the second steps, which is establishing project priorities. Quality and ultimate success of the project are traditionally defined as a meeting and or exceeding the expectation of the customer and all upper management in terms of cost or budget, time or schedule, and performance or scope of the project. As you can see on the figure 4.1, this is the project management trade-offs. This is how it's look like at the screen. Between the relationship among this criteria varies. One of the primary job of the project manager is to manage the trade-offs among the time, cost, and performance. To do so, project manager must be defined and understand the nature of the priorities of the project. They need to have a candid discussion with the project customer and upper management to establish the relative importance of each criterion. For example, if this is the what happened when the customer keeps adding requirements, or if midway through the project or trade-off must be made between cost and expediting, which is criterion has priority. So this is how it's look like the project management trade-offs. So let's proceed to the next, which is one techniques found in practice that is usually for siguro it is useful for this purpose is completing the priorities matrix for project to identify which is criterion is constrained, which should be enhanced, and which is can be accepted. As you can see, this is the project priority matrix. Display the priority matrix for the development of the new wireless router. As you can see, there is a constraint. So constraint is the original parameters fixed. The project must meet the completion date or specification and scope of the project or budget. And second is the enhance. Enhance is given the scope of the project, which criterion should be optimized. In this case of time and cost. This usually means taking advantage of opportunities or to either reduce the cost or shorten the schedule. So mag-base sila sa enhance. Next is accept, for which criterion is tolerable not to meet the original parameter, which trade-offs have to be made, is to permissible for the schedule to slip or to reduce the scope and performance of the project or to go over the budget. So this is how it looks like the project priority matrix. This is a constraint, enhance, accept in between the time of performance and cost. In summary, developing a priority matrix for project before the projects begin is useful exercise. It provides a forum of clearly establishing priorities with customer and top management so as to create a shared expectation and to avoid also the misunderstanding. The priorities information is essential to the planning process, which adjustment can be made in the scope. So 4.3 step 3, creating the work breakdown structure, will be discussed to the next.
So, we're done in the first step, which is defining the project scope, and the second step, which is establishing the project priorities. And now, let's move on to the third step, which is creating the work breakdown structure. So, what is work breakdown structure? Work breakdown structure is an outline of the project. So, when we say outline, it is a structure, a diagram, or a plan that helps project managers assure that all products and work elements will be identified through integration, coordination, and communication with the organization in establishing the project. And in order for the team or organization understand and work well to have a successful project. How this work breakdown structure helps the manager. So it provides management with information appropriate to the level and serves as a framework for tracking cost and work performance. So as what I have said in the work breakdown structure above, it helps project manager assure that all work elements will be identified by integrating, coordinating, and communicating the overall procedures or the performance and all the informations about the project. So of course, when doing the project, we have to track the cost or expenses incurred. Now, let's take a look on the next slide. So we have here figure 4.3, hierarchical breakdown of the work breakdown structure and its description. So at the top level is the project. As what the definition of project in chapter 1, it is a one-time effort limited by time, budget, resources, and performance specifications designed to meet customer needs. So next, deliverables. This is the expected, measurable outputs over the life of the project. It is the result of objective-focused work completed within the project process, either tangible or intangible like hardware or a number-based target. Then, sub-deliverables. These are smaller but important deliverables that will need to be completed. So for example, a sub-deliverable for a report could include a PowerPoint presentation that summarizes the key findings of a report, so like what we did. So in the lowest sub-deliverables includes project design and testing. Then cost accounts are formally established in the organization so that the budget is actually allocated in each detailed cost account and the project expenses are reported at that level as well. And then at the lowest level of the hierarchy is the work package. So it is the basic unit used for planning, scheduling, and controlling the So in work package, there are teams involved. So for example, the carpenters, roofers, architects, and painters. So as an owner of the building or as a manager, you can break it down into smaller tasks like you will be assigned here, paint the wall by tomorrow, or finish the kitchen in a month. So those are your work packages. It is an overall manager. Each work package in the work breakdown structure defines work. So work pertains to what project is. Second, how long does it take to complete the work package? Third, cost covers the budget and cost for the time bound. Fourth, how much resources will be needed to complete a work package? Fifth, who pertains to the people who have responsibility in doing the work? And lastly, how progressive the work was. And now, let's proceed to the fourth step, integrating work breakdown structure. So what is organization breakdown structure? Organization breakdown structure depicts how the firm has organized to discharge work responsibility, defines the organization's subdeliverables in a hierarchical pattern in successively smaller and smaller units. So, it is a project organization plan for identification of responsibility, accountability, management, and approvals of the work scope. So, the following are the purposes. First, provides a framework to summarize organization unit work performance. Second, identifies organization units responsible for work packages. Third, ties the organizational unit to cost control accounts. So, this is an example of organization breakdown structure. So, as you can see, there are people who are responsible and accountable to that particular department in the work. So, organization breakdown structure is related with work breakdown structure. The only difference is the work breakdown structure is generally based on deliverables or the phases or the outline of the project, while the organization breakdown structure includes the performer, provider, host who are responsible towards the process of a project. So basically, what the organization breakdown structure will do is what we call as the work breakdown structure. And now let's proceed to the fifth step, coding the work breakdown structure for the information system. Gaining the maximum usefulness of a breakdown structure depends on a coding system. The codes are used to define levels and elements in the work breakdown structure, organization elements, work packages, budget, and cost information. In practice, most organizations are creative in combining letters and numbers to minimize the length of work breakdown structure codes. So it is for them to make it shorter and easier. So please look at the table. For level 1, information represents the total project objective and is useful to top management. For level 2, 3, and 4, those are suitable for middle management. And then for the last level, it is for the first line managers. For level 2, there are two major deliverables. So the hardware and the CPU or the central processing unit. For level 3, CPU has deliverables. So the power supply, flash RAM, and I/O controller. So I/O controller has 3 sub-deliverables at level 4. So USB slots, internet, and touch screen. So the many sub-deliverables for USB slots and internet have not been decomposed. So that's why no more connecting lines. And then for the touch screen, there are sub-deliverables. So the sub-deliverables has been decomposed down to level 5 and to the work package level. So note that level 2 hardware skipped level 3 and 4 because the final sub-deliverables of the hardware can also be found at the lowest sub-deliverables, which can be seen at level 5, which are the frame, cameras, speakers, and antenna. So each sub-deliverables includes work packages. So 1 for frame, 4 work packages for cameras, 1 work package for speakers, and 3 work packages for the antenna. In coding, letters and numbers will be used. So for example, E for engineers, M for materials. So in our example above, the 1.0 there is the project scheme, or which is the eSlim tablet prototype, and so on. So we can use whole numbers or a combination of letters and numbers to minimize the length of work breakdown structure code. In large organizations, they use work breakdown structure dictionary because that dictionary provides the codes, names, specifications of the project.
Let's tackle about process breakdown structure. The WPS is best suited for design and build projects that have tangible outcomes such as an offshore mining facility or a new car prototype. The project can be broken down into major deliverable, sub-deliverable, further sub-deliverable, and ultimately to work packages. It is difficult to apply WBS to less tangible, process-oriented project in which the final outcome is a product of a series of steps or phases. So why is it difficult to apply WBS to less tangible? So here are the big difference. So the big difference is that the project evolves over time with each phase affecting the next phase. Information system projects typically fall in this category. To further know more, let's have an example. So for example, creating an extranet website or an internal software database system. So the process of the project are driven by the performance requirements, not by plans or blueprints. Some practitioners choose to utilize what we refer to as a process breakdown structure or PBS instead of the classic WBS. So what's the reason? So let's find it out. PBS for Software Development Project. So this is an example of a PBS for a software development project. So we have the level 1, the major phases. The analysis, design, construct, test, and rollout. Each of the 5 major phases can be broken down into more specific activities until a sufficient level of detail to communicate what needs to be done to complete that phases. Next will be the level 3. It's also an activities. The developed technical design can be broken down into defined applications, architecture, defined processing flow, design logical database structure, design system interfaces until we came up with the outputs. The software industry often refers to PBS as the water flow method since progress flows downward through each phase. So let's go back to the question why some practitioners choose to utilize a process of breakdown structure instead of the classic WBS. So the reason is, in PBS, the major phases can be broken down into more specific, unlike WBS that difficult to apply especially to less tangible. Checklists that contain the phase exit requirements are developed to manage project progress. So these checklists provide the means to support phase walkthroughs and reviews. Checklists depending both project and activities but typically include the following details. Deliverables needed to exit, quality checkpoint, sign off by all. As long as exit requirements are firmly established and deliverables for each phase are well defined, the PBS provide a suitable alternative to the standard WBS for projects that involve extensive development work. So let's proceed to the responsibility matrices. One tool that is widely used by a project manager and task force leaders of small projects is the responsibility matrix. Because, in many cases, the size and the scope of the project do not warrant an elaborate WBS or OBS. Responsibility matrix, sometimes called a linear responsibility chart. It summarizes the tasks to be accomplished and who is responsible for what on a project. So this table is an example of responsibility matrix for a market research project. So the R is used to identify the committee member who is responsible for coordinating the efforts, and S is used to identify members of the 5-person team who will support or assist the individual responsible. Next will be the example of RM for a longer and more complex project. So, as we notice, each cell uses the numeric coding. So by using RM, it makes our work content clear. Also, it clarifies the type of authority that exercised by each participant and also to view the responsibilities. So, question: in what way RMS are useful? So, from the example that I presented, we are all noticed that RMS are very useful not only for organizing and assigning responsibilities for small projects, but also for sub-project of large and more complex projects. So let's proceed to the project communication plan. Communication is a key component in coordinating and tracking project schedules, issues, and actions items. Usually, a communication plan is created by the project manager, and having a robust communication plan can have a long way toward mitigating project problems, and also it can assure the customer, team members, as well as the stakeholder to have the information to do their job. So the purpose of a project communication plan is to express what, who, how, and when information will be transmitted to a project stakeholder, so schedules, issues, and action items can be tracked. So project communication plans address the following core questions. First, what information needs to be collected and when? Second, who will receive the information? Third, what methods will be used to gather and store information? Fourth, what are the limits, if any, on who has access to a certain kind of information? Fifth, when will the information be communicated? Sixth, how will it be communicated? So developing a communication plan that answers these questions usually entails the following basic steps. First, we have the stakeholder analysis. So stakeholder analysis, it identifies the target groups. So let's take a look in the figure. It is the sample of a stakeholder communication. So some of the stakeholder may have the power either to block or enhance your project. So for example, a typical project, you want to manage closely the professional doing the work, while you want to satisfy senior management and project sponsor with periodic updates. Unions and operation manager interested in capacity would be someone you would want to keep informed, while you would only need to provide general information to the legal, public relation, and other departments. Another basic step is the information needs. Answer the questions: what information is pertinent to stakeholders who contribute to the project progress? The simplest answer to this question can be obtained by asking the different people what information they need and when they need it. For example, top management needs to know how the project is progressing, whether it is encountering critical problems, and the extent to which project goals are being realized. This information is required so that they can make strategic decisions and manage the portfolio of a project. So project team members need to see schedule, task list, specification, and the like, so they know what needs to be done next. While the external group needs to know any changes in the schedule and performance requirements of the components they are providing. So the frequent information needs found in communication plans are project status reports, changes in scope, getting decision, action items, deliverable issues, team status meetings, accepted request changes, and milestone reports. So another step is sources of information. Answer the question, where does the information reside and how will it be collected? So for example, information relating to the milestone report, team meetings, and project status meetings would be found in the minutes and reports of various groups. Next step will be the dissemination modes. In today's world, traditional status report meetings are being supplemented by email, teleconference, SharePoint, and a variety of database sharing programs to circulate information. The last step will be the responsibility and timing. It determines who will send out the information. So for example, a common practice is to have secretaries of meetings to forward the minutes or specific information to the appropriate stakeholder. In some cases, the responsibility lies with the project manager or project office. So the timing and frequency of distribution should appropriate to the information that need to be established. This figure is an example of a Shell Oil research project communication plan. So the advantage of establishing a communication plan is that instead of responding to the information request, you are controlling the flow of information. This reduces confusion and necessary interruption, and it can provide project managers greater autonomy. So that's all. Thank you and God bless us all.